What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods back with another Week 12 college football preview. Go check out our playlist. It should be titled Week 12 College Football Content for all our other game previews, breaking news this week, our live mailbag from Tuesday night. Appreciate y'all choosing the Blue Bloods to get your college football content, and make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel, and go ahead and comment your score predictions and takeaways from this giant game we have this week. And you saw the thumbnail, we have a giant game in the ACC this weekend. Number 10, Wake Forest, going on the road, going into one of the most hostile environments in the ACC in Death Valley up there at Clemson, as the Tigers are a 4-point favorite over the number 10 ranked Wake Forest Demon Deacons in a game that kicks off at 11 a.m. Central Time live on ESPN this Saturday. But the ACC Atlantic Division, guys, could be decided this weekend in Death Valley. And for the first time since 2014, the Clemson Tigers are not the team looking to lock things up in the division, as the Demon Deacons officially hold a 2-game lead right now over the Tigers. Clemson needs to win this game and needs Boston College to upset Wake Forest next weekend to find their way back to Charlotte to defend their ACC title. Now, there's a lot to kind of break down here. So let's set the table before we get into the game. The Demon Deacons enter this matchup 9-1, 6-0 in the ACC, and are coming off a giant bounce back win over number 16 NC State in Winston-Salem last weekend. Now, Wake Forest is looking to clinch the division and have a shot to win their first ACC title since 2006. It's been a long time coming for the Demon Deacons and Dave Clawson. Now, it all starts in Death Valley this weekend. A win this weekend ends the race. Wake Forest will be going to Charlotte, but a loss this weekend puts a lot of pressure on Wake Forest to go face Boston College next week and find a way to win that one to clinch the division. So I'm assuming Clawson and the Demon Deacons are coming in looking to close things out in the home of the team that has dominated this conference, and that is the Clemson Tigers, who come into this one 7-3, 5-2 in the conference, and are riding a 3-game win streak. Clemson's been looking to turn things around over the past few weeks. They fought injuries, they fought all the criticism from around the country. They have found a way to find themselves right back into this ACC title race. Now, the Tigers have found a way to win and move the football a little bit, but they have to win this weekend to keep their hopes alive to reach 7 in a row in terms of ACC championships under Dabo Sweeney. And this weekend's huge. This is a way to extend their home win streak, which is at 33 games right now, in terms of how many games in a row they have won in Death Valley. This game has everything riding for both sides. Clemson wants to send this program out and another senior class out with no home losses. So expect both teams to come in with a chip on their shoulder, and I expect this to be one of the best games of the weekend. Now, this series has a very long history dating back to 1933 in their first matchup, but the Tigers have dominated the series 68-17 with a one tie, and are currently in the midst of a 12-game win streak over the Demon Deacons. The last Wake Forest win coming in 2008, and even longer, guys. Let me just put this in perspective. The Demon Deacons have not won a game in Death Valley since 1998. I was 2 years old. I was 2 years old the last time Wake Forest had won in Clemson. So this has so many historical perspectives, conference championship implications, potential New Year's Six and college football playoff implications. Everything in Death Valley and Clemson this weekend is on the line. Now, let's get into the keys for the game since we set this giant stage. The key for the Demon Deacons, we'll start with them being the number 10 team in the country. The Demon Deacons this weekend, the key for them lies on Sam Hartman and this Wake Forest passing attack. It's the focal point of the offense, and Hartman and this receiving core have played elite football all season long, and they're going to have to step up in a big way on the road in Death Valley against one of the greatest defensive minds in college football in Brent Venables. This is going to be a huge test. Clemson's secondary is only allowing 197 yards per game through the air. The Demon Deacons, on the other hand, have the number 3 passing attack in the conference with over 318 yards per game. Something has to give. And also, this passing attack is going to be the key because it's been the whole reason, or one of the whole reasons, that Wake Forest has scored 35 or more points in every single game this season. The only team in the country to do so thus far. Now, for this key, it starts with Sam Hartman, man. He's had an year. Let's give him his credit. I think he deserves, if he doesn't win Offensive Player of the Year in the conference, because he's going to have to go up against Kenny Pickett, he at least deserves Most Improved Player, something like that. Because, I mean, this kid has had an outstanding year. Over 3,100 yards passing, 9.1 yards per pass, 30 passing touchdowns, only 8 turnovers, and 9 rushing touchdowns. He can do it all sort of ways. In the ACC, he ranks 3rd in yards per game, 2nd passing touchdowns, and 2nd in efficiency, and he's tied for 5th in the conference in rushing touchdowns. That is what Sam Hartman has done this season. And I mentioned it on last week's preview for the NC State game. What Hartman does, his number one ability for me, is how he can attack at all levels of the defense. He can beat you underneath and be a distributor and let his wide receivers make plays underneath in space. He can hit you over the middle with the intermediate routes and really put some pressure on your DBs to make plays all across the field. And he can also take the top off your defense, in which his deep ball is the most elite aspect of his game. It puts so much pressure on the defense and every single player on the defense to play near perfect defense. And that last week is something I specified they had to do against NC State. He didn't have his best game. When it came down to it, he was able to make the plays because he's so dynamic in how he can attack a defense. The number one thing for Clemson, though, in terms of this key, they cannot allow Hartman to get the deep ball going. Explosive plays and turning this game into a shootout is the quickest way for Clemson to lose this football game, in my opinion. Your offense isn't great at putting up a lot of points, and they're not super explosive this season. You cannot allow Wake Forest to turn this game into a score for score game. You have to turn this into a Clemson drag out physical type game, low scoring. Keep this game under 30 if you're Clemson. If this gets up over 30, I would be extremely worried if I'm Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables. Now, in terms of deep ball passing for Hartman, that's 20 plus yards down the field. Over 1,400 of his yards come from these passes, 18 passing touchdowns, 21 big time throws, and a 95.6 PFF passing grade. Hartman is allowed to air the ball out each week due to his experience and the trust that he has built with this coaching staff. And these deep ball passes and just trying to stretch the defense account for almost 1/4 of his total dropbacks for the year. They are not going to be afraid to put the ball in Hartman's hands and let him go make a play. He has earned Clawson's respect, and he's earned the respect of his teammates. And I would imagine they're going to trust Hartman this weekend to go make some big plays. And then, of course, if you're Wake Forest, you can't forget the running attack. It's still averaging over 180 yards rushing per game. But the number one thing against the Brent Venables-led defense is you can't be completely one-dimensional. Christian Beal, Justice Ellison, and Christian Turner are going to have to produce something on the ground. Beal with 7 rushing touchdowns this year, over 500 yards rushing. Ellison with almost 506 touchdowns. Those are going to be the two guys you look to kind of give a little bit of, you got to give Clemson a little bit of change of pace of something. You can't just sit back there and air it out. Brent Venables is going to rush 3, drop 8 in coverage, and then you're going to have problems. You're going to have to try to run the ball a little bit, just like you saw NC State earlier this year. They weren't effective running the ball really and truly, but they ran it enough to keep Clemson honest, and Devin Leary was able to take advantage down the stretch. So those are the keys for Wake Forest. We're going to get to the wide receiving core, but they're going to come later in our matchup to watch. So I'm going to save talking about them for right now. But for the key for Clemson for me, man, this weekend is going to have to be the rushing attack. I know that's really not been this offense hasn't been the strength of this team. The Tigers lost a lot of talent, guys. And I really think with the COVID year, some transfers, and also losing a lot of talent to the NFL draft, Clemson's really been hurt this year by that and injuries. Everybody on this team has been injured at one point or another this season. So the Tigers, for me, though, the reason it's the rushing attack is, one, they got to control the pace of the game. You cannot allow Wake Forest to have 1,000 possessions this weekend. You need to win the position I mean, the possessional battle and the time of possession, and you also have to limit how often your defense is on the field against such an explosive offense. If your defense gets tired and Wake Forest can generate some quick, easy scores, Clemson's going to be in trouble. So control the game, control the possessions, also control the fatigue of your defense, and that's why this rushing game is important. You have to run the ball, and then off of that, I think DJU can really find some space to throw the ball against the defense that has really been prone to giving up explosive plays. If there's a game where Clemson can revert back to that explosive, high flying offense we saw under Lawrence, with Lawrence and Etienne and Amari Rogers and some of these guys they lost, this offense has been a concern. They've only rushed for about 145 yards per game, but this Demon Deacons front seven is giving up over 200 yards per game on the ground, which is second to last in the ACC, number 13 in the ACC. Now, the injuries are the biggest concern here. Listen, Will Shipley and Kobe Pace both missed last week due to injury, but both were listed on the depth chart that was released today. I would imagine Shipley's probably a game time decision. Kobe Pace looks like he can possibly be back on track to play this weekend. They really need Shipley or Pace to play, especially Shipley with over 400 yards rushing, almost 5 yards per carry, and 7 rushing touchdowns. The true freshman is young, but he's shown at times that he can be a catalyst for this offense to have a little bit of life. Kobe Pace, 341 yards rushing, over 5.5 yards per carry, and 3 rushing touchdowns. And then also, if those two guys can't go, Phil Maffei at the running back spot will be able to assume the starting role again. He had a solid week last weekend against UConn, 241 and 2 touchdowns this year. But for Clemson, you have to run the football. Now, the biggest difference between this rushing attack and the one over the past few years, I feel like they've really suffered from a lack of explosive runs. That became so common and expected with Travis Etienne, but injuries and youth at this running back spot have really impacted Clemson's rushing attack. But Wake Forest has given up almost 5 yards per carry. You saw what Ty Chandler was able to do against this front seven. So Clemson, the number one thing they've done well is the inside run. Running through the A gaps is something to watch this weekend and see how Wake Forest counteracts that. In A gap runs, Clemson's rushed for over 500 yards, over 5 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns, over 38 first downs, and 19 explosive runs or 10 or more yards. That's where I think they're going to focus their run game this weekend. They're going to look to pound this Wake Forest team out. Clemson has the size advantage, and as long as they play physical and Dabo Swinney has them believing that they're the better team, they can go out there and try to impose their will, and that's what I imagine they would probably do. And the other factor is the run game to set up things for DJU at the quarterback spot. He's for me, he's the X factor for Clemson. He is going to have a giant game this weekend, generate some explosive plays because you're going to have to go tit for tat with Sam Hartman, and DJU has to do something down the field. He's only completed about 54% of his passes, 1,700 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 picks, and 4 rushing touchdowns. He's 11th in passing touchdowns in the conference, 10th in yards per game, and 12th in completion percentage, and is the lowest quarterback in passing efficiency this year. But one of the bright spots for DJ has been his intermediate game this year. This weekend, if he can find a way to test this secondary, make them make plays over the middle, that could be something to see. Because for me, if you're Clemson, you have nothing to lose this weekend. You need to push the ball down the field and take some risk and trust DJ to go make plays, because playing conservative this weekend is going to get you beat, because as good as your defense is, Wake Forest is still going to put up some points. Now, in the intermediate range, 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, 4 big time throws, over 28 first downs generated. That's where he's been the most effective, is in that 10 to 19 yard range over the middle. Now, on deep throws, they don't do them often. They haven't really pushed the ball down the field, but DJU has the arm for it. 4 touchdowns, 11 big time throws, a 76.5 PFF passing grade. That's his highest passing grade of any of the zones you can pass in. It's just that Clemson hasn't set it up very well to get the ball down the field. Tony Elliott needs to put the ball in DJ's hand and say, go make us some plays. We're going to run the football. When we put the ball in your hands, we need some plays made over, down the field. Challenge this defense that has been giving up a lot of explosive plays week after week. If Army can put up 56 points on the Demon Deacons defense, Tony Elliott needs to have this Clemson offense clicking this weekend. So those are the keys for Clemson. Now, a matchup to watch. I kind of already spoiled it. It's going to be strength versus strength. The Wake Forest wide receivers against this Clemson secondary. Wake Forest has leaned on this wide receiving group to be their top playmakers all season long. And this will arguably be the biggest test of the season for these Clemson DBs. Georgia was missing their top three wide receivers. And I don't think that Clemson has seen a deeper wide receiving core than what's going to be on the field this week, especially with how good the top two wide receivers are for the Demon Deacons. Forcing turnovers and limiting explosive plays are keys for this secondary for Clemson. You look at this wide receiving core for the Demon Deacons. I think they're one of the more underrated units in the country. I think they have multiple players that can find their way to your TVs on Sundays in the NFL draft. I think there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to this Wake Forest wide receiving core for being the number two scoring offense in the country with over 44 points per game right now. And it starts with two names. Y'all should know them. Jaquari Robinson and A.T. Perry. These two guys are going to be X factors this weekend. If they can go make plays like they do in the biggest moments for Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons have a great chance at pulling off this huge upset. And I say upset because they are the underdogs this weekend. Robertson with 51 catches, 860 yards, and 8 touchdowns, top 10 in yards per game, yards per catch, top 5 in touchdowns, top 10 in receptions. And then on top of that, you have A.T. Perry with 47 catches, over 900 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He's top 5 in yards per game, top 3 in per catch, number 1 in the ACC in receiving touchdowns, and top 10 in receptions. Perry and Robertson, if they have big games, Clemson's in trouble. You have to try to slow these two guys down, because if they get going down the field and Hartman gets that rhythm going, this Wake Forest offense is damn near impossible to stop. And you still have to worry about Taylor Moore, 29 catches, over 400 yards, and Keyshawn Williams, who has really come on of late. The wide receiving core has to create some separation. If they can put a lot of pressure on the back end of this defense, I really think it can open things up underneath for this offense. You cannot let Brent Venables have his way. You cannot let him feel comfortable bringing blitzes and playing on islands outside. If they leave you in one-on-one coverage, you have to go make them pay. Make Brent Venables have to play conservatively with his defense. If he can pin his ears back and bring the house, he's going to. Listen, I've said on this podcast, Brent Venables is the most creative blitzer in the country. If you allow him to get after Hartman, it's going to be a problem. Make plays one-on-one and help out your quarterback and offensive line. That's the biggest thing for these wide receivers and why I picked this matchup. Now, the secondary for Clemson, already mentioned, allowing less than 200 yards per game, fourth in the ACC, and they've allowed the lowest yardage per completion mark in the ACC with less than 6 yards per catch, and have only allowed 9 passing touchdowns this year, which is second in the ACC. The three guys you got to look out for, or the four guys: Andrew Booth, Makuba, Nolan Turner, and Mario Goodrich. These are the four guys that are going to be the focal point of the secondary. Booth has only allowed 2 touchdowns all year, but on only 37 targets, has a big pass breakup. Andrew Makuba, less than 200 yards allowed, only 1 touchdown allowed, and 4 pass breakups. Turner's allowed less than 170 yards, and Goodrich has 6 pass breakups and a pick, no touchdowns allowed, and less than 140 yards allowed. Booth and Goodrich matched up on Robertson and A.T. Perry could be huge this weekend. I would love to see that matchup. I can't wait to see how Brent Venables schemes against this explosive offense, because this is probably the best offense the Tigers have seen all season long. Now, for prediction, man, got family in Clemson, and I never thought that Wake Forest and Clemson would be coming down for the ACC, but right now, man, I have a tough time believing that Clemson, as good as their defense is, can keep Wake Forest under 30 points. And I just don't trust Clemson to have the consistency on the offensive side of the ball to win this game. I don't trust DJU. Their two top running backs are banged up. Justin Ross has really been the only explosive receiving option. I think the defense can hang in early. I just don't trust Clemson to be able to establish drives as well as some other teams. I do think this game is back and forth. It's a close one. Death Valley is probably going to be packed and loud, and I've been to that stadium before, and that's one of my favorite stadiums I've ever been to. I've said it's still the loudest stadium I've ever been in. But for me, I think the Demon Deacons snap the 33 home game winning streak and win their first game in Death Valley since 1998 this weekend. Have the Demon Deacons winning this game 35-27 over the Clemson Tigers in Death Valley this weekend. An 8-point win for Wake Forest. And of course, since they're the underdog, they win outright. But guys, comment your score predictions below. I'm so excited for this matchup. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and just comment. Let me know where I was wrong. Let me know where I was right, what you guys are looking for in the game. And of course, like I say, your score predictions. Appreciate y'all choosing the Blue Bloods for y'all's college football content. We'll be back later with some more college football previews. Stick around, check out some more previews. The playlist will be linked at the end of the video. But for right now, guys, the Blue Bloods are out.